Okay, right. So part 4, chapter 13, Second Amendment. Let's go over some of these stats that the liberals hate to bring up, or when they're brought up. And they squirm like rats every time they are. There was a Harvard study, a recent Harvard study, that proved that armed citizens stop crime. That actual gun ownership, when it increases, crime decreases in that area. It's coincidental, happens at the same time. One comes from the other. It also showed that most gun crimes are it showed that most gun crimes are with stolen or illegally obtained guns. This is something we've been saying as conservatives forever. When guns become when guns become illegal to law-abiding citizens, there's still a black market. And that's how most criminals obtain the guns anyway. They're either stolen or they're illegally obtained one way or another. They're not, criminals don't tend to purchase them over the counter, as it were. They avoid all this razzmatazz with the background checks and the 3-day waiting period and all this other stuff. That affects almost nobody. You can harp on this and oh, it's for the children, it's for safety, and it's for this and that, and it doesn't do a damn thing. When you make criminals out of law-abiding citizens, only criminals will have guns. Period. It's that simple. Another statistic about the assault rifle thing also, another myth about that, is the excuse they like to give about the assault rifle, aside from it sounding horrible, is they claim that these assault rifles are used in crime and it would help lower crime by banning them. Of course, what that ignores is another fact. And that is, criminals don't use assault rifles very often. Oh, it looks good in the movies. Some guy, coming into a house with an assault rifle, or, on a bank robbery with assault. No. There's a reason for that. And it's a very logical reason that criminals don't tend to prefer assault rifles or semi-automatic rifles. And that's because they're not easily portable, and they're not easily concealable, like a handgun is. So they tend to use handguns. Oh, darn it. That runs into a problem. The liberals have been spending all this time trying to get rifles and automatic weapons out of our hands, but they've already kind of conceded that handguns are okay. Now what do we do? So they ignore this fact. The only people really affected by bans of assault rifles, therefore, are not criminals, but law-abiding citizens. Do they know this, or do they not know this? Because if they know this, then that means they're purposely going after your rights. If they don't know this, then they're ignoramuses that need to be taught. I'll let you decide which is worse. Malicious attempts to overthrow your right or undermine your rights, or malicious ignorance. And which is more dangerous? Another interesting tidbit is, according to the ACLU and like-minded organizations, they believe it's better to confiscate all guns and deprive law-abiding citizens and all Americans of their constitutional right than it is to incarcerate a few nutburgers, mentally ill people, before they can even commit the crime. Remember, we had this discussion before about how the laws have changed about how long you can hold somebody, and what we can deal with, what we're dealing with the mentally ill, when we were talking about mass murderers and the like, and how liberals have decided that they can't prevent the mentally ill from doing something in the future if they're not endangering themselves or other people right now. So they can't hold them. They can't even hold them to long enough to have them analyzed to see if they have a potential, and then do anything if they find that they would have a potential of hurting themselves or other people. But they'd rather these people go free and potentially shoot everyone than protect people's own rights to keep and bear arms. That's the mindset of the ACLU and other organizations like that, and other liberals. Progressives believe that James Madison and others were wrong because, you know, they're smarter than the founding fathers. That science has somehow proved that there are no rights to no rights of human nature. Remember, we're talking about this is something we're born with. That was a decision of 18th century thinking. And no permanent human nature exists, that only in evolving social conditions should be determined at the time as to whether these rights even hold water. Believing in natural human rights is an enemy to collective welfare, which they believe should take precedence over individual rights, and they always do. They hate individual rights. They're always thinking in terms of the collective good, the greater good. And as I wrote in my book, one of my favorite passages, or my favorite quotes of all time, by someone nobody even knows who it is, an anonymous person, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. Or the road to hell is paved with good intentions. These do-gooders who hide behind this false thing that they put out, that they're doing it for the greater good, for the children, for the elderly, for the whatever, they almost always leave devastation in their wake. They're always leaving some destruction in their wake. You know, the right, when they have a march, like the Tea Party people, or a march or a gathering, they leave the place as they found it. Clean, unlittered. Go follow a woman's march, or a Black Lives Matter march, or an Occupy Wall Street tent city, or whatever. After they've done raping everybody and smashing all the buildings, windows in the buildings, they leave behind a graveyard of litter. They leave destruction in their wake all the time. And they do it both literally, and they do it figuratively. They're after your individual rights, and many of them make no bones about it. They don't believe in them. Just like H.G. Wells, as we mentioned, who thought it was funny, the idea of human liberty. Of course, then they like to say, oh, but the police are so much more better equipped to handle crime than citizens who are armed and know how to use a weapon or not. The error rate of the police force, nationally, all police forces, is 11%. The error rate of armed citizens making mistakes with their guns, 2%. Now, you're going to say, I know, right out of the gate, oh, but there's so much less citizens using their guns than the police. I didn't say quantity. I didn't say number. I said percentage. 11% cops, 2% armed citizens. Now, I'm not disparaging the cops. I have a feeling that a lot of this 11% is because of how much they're handcuffed in the way they have to treat bad guys. And that's the liberals stepping on themselves and getting in their own way of their, whatever. And the hatred of the police right now is not helping anymore. And the inability of police to do their jobs and protect themselves in the way they think should be done is also part of it. But all that leads to an 11% error rate, and armed citizens 2%. No matter how much they're actually involved, 2% is 2%. Never, it's not going to change because there's more armed citizens or less armed citizens. At least I don't think so. But as of now, 2%. Criminals killed by police per year. This may be a few years ago, but whatever. It's not going to fluctuate that much. 606. 606 citizens are people. They might be all illegals for all I know, but people are killed every year by cops on average. 606. Doesn't sound like a very big number, does it? How many people are killed by? How many criminals? I'm sorry. I'm gonna restate that. Criminals killed by police. Now you're gonna say, well, they didn't have their day in court, they didn't have their due process, blah blah blah. Caught in the act of a criminal activity, and then refusing arrest or something, what have you, killed by police, average every year, 606. How many criminals are killed by armed citizens? 1,527. Over twice as many criminals in the act of doing a crime are killed by armed citizens and police because they're not handcuffed. Usually it's in defense of themselves or their family. It's not necessarily just some guy sees something, he happens to be packing, and he goes off and chases a criminal and shoots him, because that probably would get him in jail. No, this is probably people stopping armed robberies in their own homes. Over twice as many as cops kill criminals. And you say, well, we don't want anyone killed. Okay? But they're doing the job. And they're doing it better. Last point is one that is probably the most telling of all. In 1982, the city of Kennesaw, Georgia, passed a law that mandated that all adult households, all households with adults, have a weapon of some kind, have at least one firearm in the household. Mandated. Now, you're going to say, as a liberal, well, how's that work with the Constitution? Remember, once again, lib, the right to bear arms is a right, not a law. So you cannot, by increasing the amount of firearms that individuals or households have, does not go against a law. It strengthens a right. That's okay. You're allowed to strengthen a law or a right. You're not allowed to water it down. You're not allowed to abridge it. Shall not be infringed. As a result of this mandated law that all households have at least one firearm in Kennesaw, Georgia, going all the way back to 1982, the burglary rate dropped almost immediately by 89%, versus only a drop of 10.4% in Georgia as a whole. Remember, we've been saying that since the late 80s, most violent crimes and murder rates have been dropping. But 89% versus 10.4%. That's amazing. But it also makes a whole lot of sense. Why would a guy who wants to go kill people go to a place he knows there's guns? If he knows that there's another place that does not have guns, which one's he going to pick? Duh. Today in Kennesaw, Georgia, the rate is still 85%, less than the national or state average. That is absolutely amazing. But it's also very, very telling. And what should it be telling you? It should be telling you that when armed citizens are allowed to actually have arms, when citizens are actually legally and let alone to have the arms that they inherited by being born in America and being part of the social compact of America, crime rates drop. There has been book after book, study after study, proving this fact. That in any given situation where you have a would-be criminal and either an armed citizen, or an unarmed citizen, the crime is avoided, stopped, somehow, way, 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 way more often when a citizen is armed than when he is not. Every single time these liberals cry out for gun control following some idiots shooting up a place or killing a bunch of people, the citizens of the United States buy more guns. The purchase of handguns and other weapons goes up. They keep shooting themselves in the foot, folks, if you'll pardon the phrase. You know, if the liberals were smart, I mean, actually smart, not just clever, they might stop recommending gun control and advocate the opposite if they actually wanted the opposite effect. But every time they shoot their mouth off, again, pardon the pun, citizens run to the gun stores. There's more guns in the hands of Americans now than there ever has been, and it's all thanks to the liberals who keep stepping on their own you-know-what and making it worse for themselves. Keep it up, libs, because before long, you're going to be in a position where there isn't anything you can possibly do to the Constitution that would result in a socialist government, because you've now got more people owning guns in the United States, or more guns in the United States, than are even owned by maybe even more than the military itself, which many of which would end up being on the side of the citizens, not the federal government. I guarantee you, when 70% of the military votes right-wing, votes Republican or conservative, that a lot of the military, when it comes to it, and we get into a despotic situation, God forbid, there's a good chance that more than half the military is going to be on the side of citizens and not its government. Why? Because they understand that the government is run by the citizens. And if they revolt, they're in charge. That's how it works in America. So, what have we learned? The right to keep bear arms and the right to have a militia are rights that are inherited by us simply by being born. They're not given to us, and they cannot be taken away in any way. The citizens are meant to be armed on purpose. That individuals have the right to arm themselves by law. That statistics prove that a well-armed citizenry prevents crime. That the only reason that we're even having this argument is because progressives, radicals, left-wingers, liberals are trying to achieve their utopia where only the powerful have guns, because they only want the people at the top to have the power, and not the citizens have any power. And as long as they are armed, they can fight and they can have power. Think about it. And hope you've gotten something out of this video, and we will see you for chapter 14. See ya.